Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about the Nintendo Switch 2, and this news does not really surprise me in the least. It was rumored in the past, and now it's been confirmed by NVIDIA of all sources. Nintendo Switch 2 will be using DLSS. And that's completely understandable given the fact that they're claiming the dock can go up to 4K. So on top of HDR and ray tracing and all of that stuff, it does seem it will be relying on DLSS to get up to 4K and also to get up to 120 frames per second at 1080p. Now this bit here I'm assuming means with DLSS. They're saying it's got 10 times the graphical performance of the existing Nintendo Switch. And that is also understandable if they're factoring in DLSS. From a raw horsepower perspective, I don't necessarily think so, but I could be wrong. And speaking about frame rates here, it's being reported that Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition on the Switch 2 is, well, it's going to cost $70 and runs at 40 frames per second in performance mode while docked. And while not docked, it runs at about 24 to 30 frames per second. Now, I don't know about you here, but to me this is a little bit disappointing. I mean, using DLSS, I would hope that Cyberpunk 2077 could be pumped to 60 frames per second. Maybe it can later on, I don't know here. But 40 frames per second while docked, it's a little underwhelming to me given the fact that we've already got hardware out there, handheld hardware that can do similar stuff. I mean, if you don't believe me on that one, head to YouTube and, well, just check out stuff like the Steam Deck using FSR. And there are a bunch of videos out there showcasing Cyberpunk 2077 up and running at 60 frames per second in handheld mode. And speaking about the Switch 2, next up here, we're still talking about the Switch 2. It's kind of the same segment. Anyways, here it's being reported, and this article is getting a lot of attention, that the Switch 2 is using Switch Emulation in order to get Switch games running on the Switch 2. It's being reported that the Switch 2 is not natively compatible with Nintendo Switch games. And from what I'm seeing here, I don't necessarily think the Switch 2 is using something like Yuzu to get the games up and running. It seems like it's using a compatibility or translation layer similar to something like Proton. Now, like everything we talk about, link is in the description below right at the bottom if you wanted to learn more about it. But here is the quote, I think, from Nintendo, somewhere in between a software emulator and hardware compatibility. And a lot of people are attributing that to Yuzu and Ryujinx because Nintendo famously went after both emulators. And I don't necessarily think that's the case here. However, and this is a big one, however, I don't necessarily think it'd be a lot of work for Yuzu and Ryujinx, provided they were still under development, to be compatible with the Switch 2, and I'm guessing that's why one of the big reasons Nintendo took them down. My big question about all of this, though, is more or less battery life, because the Switch 2 does not have as good as battery life as the existing Switch. That's been reported. And I'm wondering if they need more horsepower in order to, horsepower is not the right word, but you know what I'm talking about. If they need more CPU and GPU power in order to run Switch games on the Switch 2, will that reduce battery life even further? And that would be pretty unfortunate given the fact that the Switch 2 is supposed to be better than the Switch, but worse than the Switch when handling Switch games per se. We'll have to wait and see on that one. I mean, you can dispute me on that one, and I think the final figures will give us a good picture once the Switch 2 is released, because it's being reported here that Switch 2 compatibility for Switch games is being tested one by Nintendo, and only 25% of games run without issues so far. And that to me is concerning. Now, what's also concerning here, and I didn't talk about this in my video yesterday, and when I was saying I wasn't interested in pre-ordering the Switch 2. Anyways, here Nintendo has confirmed some Switch 2 game cards will only include a download key. And a lot of you pointed that out in the comments, and you also pointed out the price of Switch games in the comments. I mean, Insider Gaming is reporting that Nintendo Switch 2 live stream comments are 99% spam of drop the price. And that may be, well, if you're Nintendo here, that might be concerning. I don't know, maybe they don't care. Maybe they think people will buy their games at any price here. But based on the comments on my video yesterday, a lot of you were very concerned about the overall price of games. But based on everything we talked about here, I am very curious to hear your thoughts on the matter on the Switch 2. Are you concerned about anything? Are you excited about stuff? Let me know. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible here. It's just the reporting on this seems to be really negative. And speaking about the Switch 2, next up here we're talking about the original Nintendo Switch. and I received a bunch of messages that Citron emulator had been taken down, but taking a look at the website here, and the website still appears to be up. Citron-emu.org appears to be up, and the emulator still appears to be active. And on a side note here, if you're unfamiliar with the latest Citron development drama, we talked about this one in a previous video, but it does seem the development team has parted ways. Some of the team is still remaining on Citron, and some of the team is creating a brand new Switch emulator called Eden, which I'm also going to assume is a fork of Yuzu or Ryujinx or something. I have not seen Eden pop up yet, but when I know more, I'll talk about it. And speaking about knowing more, next up here we're talking about Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. And the more I know about this game, the less I am interested in it. Now, when this game was first announced, I was pumped for it. I'm a massive fan of Fatal Fury Mark of the Wolves. But City of the Wolves here, when it was announced, I was excited. But the more we find out about this game, the more interesting, I'll use the word interesting, it gets. So we covered an announcement the other week when Cristiano Ronaldo was going to be a playable character. I thought that was super weird. And now they've announced another super weird playable character. Now, to be honest with you, I didn't know who this person was until they announced them and until I did my research. But it turns out that a DJ is now going to be a playable character in the game. Salvatore Ganacci. I might have mispronounced that one. It's something. I took a look at the date on that video thinking it may have been showcased on April 1st, and that is not the case here. And it seems some of these comments share a similar sentiment that I'm having. Anyways, this person says, Fatal Fury has a DJ already. His name is Duck King. April Fool's was 2 days ago. Putting 2 guest celebs in the base roster over requested series regulars is certainly a choice. This is getting out of hand. Now there are 2 of them. And taking a look at more comments on this video, and a lot of people do not seem to be happy about this reveal overall and the game overall. I mean, this person here says, genuinely hilarious how I've gone from holy shit, new Fatal Fury to I think I feel grimy buying this game. Now, as most of you know, I don't normally pre-order games at all. I'm not necessarily a fan of pre-ordering and sometimes the lack of quality from initial release. Anyways, here, this one was at least on my wish list, and I have taken it off my wish list. These latest announcements are just not of interest to me in the game anymore. It just feels the game is losing its overall spirit and charm like the original one had. Let me know your thoughts about this one and if these announcements affected your overall excitement for the game or if they added to your excitement. And speaking about excitement, next up we're talking about Xbox Game Pass. If you've got Xbox Game Pass, you might be excited to know that Grand Theft Auto 5 is headed to Game Pass. If you've got Game Pass for PC, you might be excited to know that Grand Theft Auto 5 Enhanced Edition is headed to Xbox Game Pass for PC. I said a whole lot there without breathing. Anyways, keep your eyes on the calendar here for April 15th if you are on Game Pass. And speaking about fighting games, next up we're talking about Tekken, and it appears that players of Tekken are not too happy with some of the recent changes. Here's a statement from Tekken. We are aware of the current community feedback regarding Tekken 8 Season 2. We are carefully reviewing the balance of the game. Expect more information about these changes soon. And you don't see this one that often. In addition, an emergency patch will be released in April to address the following issues. So here are the 2 issues, and these are some, emphasizing some of the issues with Season 2. Number 1 here, Paul's Hammer of the Gods results in a guaranteed follow-up on block, which was not intended. No kidding. And Jack 8's jab elbow makes some noise. When blocking, the third hit is uninterruptible. So on one hand here, it's great that Tekken is working quickly to address this stuff. On the other hand here, it's very unfortunate that these issues exist and even more. And I will say, if you are playing online, be prepared to face off against a whole bunch of Paul players and a whole bunch of Jack 8 players taking advantage of these things. Next up, we're talking about N64 emulation with Gopher64. And Gopher64 got a brand new release here. It's relatively small, but introduces something pretty neat. So at the time of filming, version 1.0.15 is the latest update. And Gopher64 gets updated quite a bit. Anyways, here they fixed a graphics issue, and this is the feature that I'm a big fan of. Controller input works even if window doesn't have focus, and I would say this is a pretty big quality of life improvement. I mean, if you think about it, if you like to multitask, if sometimes something pops up on screen, well, you don't have to stop playing the game, and I love that. And speaking about loving stuff, next up here, I'm pretty sure the developers of inZOI are pretty happy right now. They've just reported that the game has already surpassed 1 million in sales, and this game just came out and it's still in early access. I'm guessing here that a lot of people who like The Sims are probably picking up inZOI for a fresh take on the genre. Anyways, over on Steam, this game was released just a week ago, so 1 million sales in a week, and it has a very positive review score. And last up here, we're talking about PlayStation 3 emulation with RPCS3, and I would say this is a pretty big win for preservation and convenience. So here's the announcement from the RPCS3 team. Today we're releasing the RPCS3 build archive. This is a comprehensive collection of every RPCS3 build built by our automated CI, set up 10 years ago. They say that many of these builds could not be found online anymore and have been sitting on a backup hard drive for years. The entire archive is currently over 0.5 terabyte. This will allow for pinpointing any existing regressions that are old, as well as for historical documentation for easily testing differences in RPCS3 throughout the years. It will also ensure that every build will continue to be available going forward, even if their original source becomes unavailable one day. I think this is a huge win for RPCS3 and also for those people who find a version of RPCS3 that they love. It may be missing some of the features from newer versions, but at the same time it may run better on their PC for some reason, or just perceive to run better, or they just like the look and feel of an older version and always want access to it. Anyways, here, let me know your thoughts about this one, but I think this is awesome for the emulator. PS3 emulation this year is just getting win after win, in my opinion. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state, and I'll see you tomorrow.